Well, you get arrested, and they charge you with a continuing criminal enterprise.
A CCE.
CCE. Is that the equivalent of a RICO, pretty much?
It is, yes.
Right. You were facing...
But much higher numbers.
Right, because you're facing 20 to life.
That is correct.
Okay, so now you're locked up.
So these guys, they were squirming and squabbling about, we gotta beat Whitey to the punch. Whitey's already a rat. If he's a rat, you ain't beating anything to a punch. So I heard them. I heard one of the guys talk about it. So I grabbed him and I took him for a walk in the courtyard of the prison. I said, listen, I'm going to tell you this, and this is what I know. And Whitey said this too. It got back to me already. He said they're going to say things to try to discredit me because they can't get me. He said, that's exactly what he said to me. They're going to try to discredit me and say things because they can't get me. So I said, well, that makes sense. Federal government, you know? I mean, they do that shit all the time, right? So I took this individual for a walk around the yard. I said, first of all, don't believe everything you hear from the federal government. They're trying to make you roll. So they're going to tell you and say anything and put things out there to make you roll. Because that's what they want. And you're falling for it. I said, but there's a caveat. I said, but even if Whitey is a fucking rat, where we come from, and you're one of the guys who preached it from the neighborhood, no matter what, never become a fucking rat. Just remember that. I never heard another word about, oh, we should say this or we should do that ever again. I sent that information back to Whitey immediately, what was happening, what they were saying.
Well, at one point you changed lawyers, and you get John Gotti's lawyer.
No, I got Richard Egbert, because Whitey didn't want me to be with Tony Cardinelli, and Tony was a high-end mob lawyer at the time. He was the lead attorney on the Italians when they got indicted in Boston. And he represented Fat Tony Salerno, and he was on the Gotti case, right. And that's where that comes from. Whitey wanted me to go with another lawyer called by the name of Richard Egbert. And Richard Egbert was a fantastic lawyer also. And he was paying for it. So I listened to him.
Right. It was a $750,000 bail.
Yes.
And Whitey actually put up the money.
Yes.
Okay. It's a pretty big move right there. So basically you
So
felt
I got
like
the
Whitey,
lawyer. I get the lawyer.
Yeah.
I get billed out. Well, I didn't get billed out. I get billed out after we fought for 1 year.
Yeah.
I was 1 year fighting to get out on the bracelet. 1 year. And we eventually won. And I was on the bracelet. You know, and Richard Egbert was my lawyer at that time. And Whitey felt secure with that because he didn't trust Tony Cardinelli, because if Cardinelli dug and he found out, he would have found out. He would have found out if Whitey was a rat or not. And that's why Whitey wanted me to go with Richard Egbert, because Richie would have left it alone, because if he was, I think he knew. I think he knew Whitey was a rat. And he worked with him. So that said, Richie was going to do his best that he could for me. Anything that he could for me. And fight and fight and fight. Richie was a hell of a lawyer. Very, very intelligent guy. Very good lawyer. And he represented a lot of mob guys too in Boston. But Tony, if he found out Whitey was a rat, it would have been over for Whitey at that moment. Whitey would have been had back then. That's why he didn't want me with Cardinelli.
Okay, so your lawyer starts to negotiate with the feds, and ultimately...
I was the last guy to negotiate, by the way.
And you pled guilty to distribution, trafficking, and a managerial charge.
That is correct.
And they wanted 15 years, but you finally settled on 11 years, 4 months, including time served.
That is correct. I had 12 years total, just about 12 years.
You didn't feel confident to go to trial?
No, my lawyer told me, Richie I said, first of all, I'd like to cut this fucking bracelet off and take the fuck off right now. Let's put it that way, Richie. I said, and even Tony Cardinelli, because I was still in contact with Tony Cardinelli, he said, John, you got an obligation here. You got to do this. Instead of taking off, you got to do this. Because you got to close the door. You're the guy to close the door here, Johnny. Once you plead, that case is over with. It's done. You're the last of the Mohegans. They got to go through you to get him on this. I said, I know. The deal's done. I don't have a problem. Let's do it. Now, mind you, 12 years is a long time in prison. Over a decade in prison is a long time for anyone.
Yeah.
And even more is even worse, right? But here I was at the time ready to do 20 to life. So for me, the 12 years was like a deal to me. I was like, thank you. I said, yeah, I'll take that. Of course, I wasn't going to tell the government that. I like to play poker, and I think I'm pretty good at it, and you got to have a poker face. So